Okay, so this section is going to be relative short. It will still be long, but relative to the others it's short. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. We move towards our main position. Bishop a4, knight f6, short castle. Bishop e7, rook e1. b5, bishop b3, d6. c3, short castle, h3. So we have looked what happens after rook e8, knight b8, bishop b7 does not have independent meaning. It goes towards the same after all. So now the main move here is of course knight a5 that has been played extensively throughout the last 100 years. Bishop c2, and now main move is c5. We will cover it in the next section, but here I want to speak about the move b5. This might be an unpleasant surprise, so it's always good to know what to do here. d4, this is the way I think white should play. Now, after after knight takes e4, white takes on e5 with a knight, and the point here is that the knight on a5 stays bad. In addition, squares c6 and c5 are weak. The move b5 represents also a weakness. On e4, a pawn is hanging right now. So it seems like black has more problems than he should after the normal opening. So bishop b6, knight d2, f5, and knight can go to f3. So now we have the square e5 in our hands and should be able to play from here. So I think the position of white is better. So for this reason, main move is to take on e4. Another possibility, taking on d4, is not so good because of e5, knight e4, and c takes d4. And here again, white is slightly better. So d takes e4, knight takes e5. And now what white wants is not so much to take on e4 immediately, but simply to play knight d2 and take on e4 then. So if black doesn't create some kind of counterplay, then he takes risk to lose the pawn. So he shall play c5, bishop e3, protecting the pawn for the future. So now the knight can go to d2 again. Black plays bishop b7, knight d2. Of course, we want to play our plan. And here there are three moves. So first of all, knight d5 is not dangerous. Pawn sacrifice doesn't bring anything. We take on e4, knight takes e3, and f takes e3. After queen d5, white can simply go back with the knight, closing the long diagonal with the knight from f3. And after c takes d4, he takes d4. I think it's obvious that white is better. Much better, actually. So instead of knight d5, another story is queen d5. Here white has strong move knight g4, attacking the knight f6, and this way also taking pawn e4. After knight takes g4, for example, h takes g4, f5 loses after g takes f5, queen takes f5, and f3. The pawn e4 gets lost. Knight takes g4 doesn't work, and if black takes on d4, white takes with the bishop, e3, knight takes e3, queen c6, and knight f3, and again white should win. Okay, but things are not that simple, however, here. Instead of queen d5, black can play queen c7. This is more dangerous because now he wants to play bishop d6 and attack the knight e5. So how do we get the pawn e4? That is the question. It turns out that there is a strong move queen b1. So now the pawn hangs again. C takes d4. Now it's tempting to take on d4 with a pawn, because then it seems like we are getting pawn e4, but here black has extra resource bishop b4. And in the next move he will probably take on d2 and play knight c4. And black has equal chances. So which means that after c takes d4 we have to take with the bishop. Black plays bishop d6, attacking the knight. There's only one move we can play here, knight g4. Knight takes g4, h takes g4, and bishop h2. We have to go to h1. The problems with king f1, there are multiple problems here. Black might want to play with f5, opening the f file, which is dangerous with the king on f1. He may also try to play with knight c4, and the idea here is that after knight takes c4, black takes with the queen, white is forced to play rook e2, which is of course not really what he wants to do. So we simply play king h1. Now black can play bishop f4, queen f4, and f5. f5 is the easiest to disprove. G takes f5, rook takes f5, and we simply play queen d1, taking the square h5, because black wanted to play rook h5, that was his idea. So now that the square is taken, and pawn e4 will get lost in the next move. And g6, this idea rook h5 doesn't work because of knight e4. So now rook h5 is very bad because of knight f6. Also, taking on e4 first is not good because of bishop takes e4, rook h5, and now we can actually simply take on a8. Whenever the bishop goes back, we play king g1, and then king f1 if bishop goes back to h2. So this is not serious. So f5 is bad. Another move that has been played in the game is queen f4. White goes to f1, rook a e8, knight takes h2, knight c4. So these are the last attempts of black to imitate some kind of counterplay, but of course all that doesn't bring anything. e3, f takes e3, queen g3, e4, f5, queen g5. Well, white has an extra piece, and I think the rest is clear. So bishop f4 is the strongest move. And here, surprisingly, white has to take care. After knight takes e4, black gets dangerous compensation. g5, knight c6, bishop e3, bishop takes e3, rook takes e3, and knight e5. And somehow all the black pieces look very active. So the rook is playing on the e file, knight can go to c4, to g4, bishop is active, pawn g5 is weak, and the king is also weak. So I'm sure that black has enough compensation here. So for this reason, we don't take on e4 immediately. Instead, we play knight f1. And now we want to take on e4. And black actually cannot protect the pawn. He's more or less forced to play f5. If instead he plays like rook f e8, then of course we take already. Bishop takes, rook takes, queen c6, rook takes e8, rook takes e8, queen f5. Now, small tricky move, bishop c1, but don't become scared, just don't take on c1 because that's what black is praying for. Queen h6 and he wins on c1. Bishop c1. Before knight c4 and king g1. And now the bishop hangs. And the point here is that after rook e1, now it looks very dangerous for white, but he can simply take on c1 and play queen g5, attacking both the rook and with deadly threat queen d8 and checkmate. So black is forced to take n1, king takes f1, and white has an extra pawn plus threat on g7 and on d8. So black will be forced to play f6, queen f5, and here of course only two results are possible, so white has the idea g5 in mind, and I think he should be winning this. So rook f8 is too simple. It just allows us to take the pawn. Let's see what happens after f5. Here, before taking on f5, white plays king g1. Now he wants to take, and then we get the e4 pawn. So black has two options. He can play knight c6, or he can take on g4. If he takes on g4, he maintains material equality, but his position doesn't improve because of that. Bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4, queen takes e4. Look, notice that the pawn g4 is weak, knight doesn't play, and the king is also weakened. Black plays queen d7, white wanted to give check from e6 to take pawn g4. An alternative move is h5, but then after queen e6, queen f7 and knight g3, the position of white is better. Bishop takes g3, f takes g3, queen takes e6, rook takes e6, and now the bishop on d4 is very strong. It attacks the pawn g7. The white can play rook g6 with idea. Take on g7. Also the rook is attacking pawn a6. So two rooks and bishop in such a position are much stronger than knight and two rooks. So h5 is bad. And queen d7. We play bishop c5. Rook a e8. Rook from f8 cannot move anywhere because rook a8 hangs and bishop f4. So rook a8 is the only move. Queen d4. Queen takes, c takes. So now we get pawn that is moving forwards. Rook takes e1. Rook takes e1. Rook f6. Rook e8 check, king f7, and rook a8. And here, because of the weakness on a6 and because the pawn d4 is so strong and wants to go forward, the position of white again is better. So the black pawns on the king side, these 3 pawns are not better than the 2 pawns of white. So practically white has an extra pawn here. So black can, of course, play such an endgame, but it's not much fun. But also, in case he plays knight c6 and gives up the pawn, then of course his position will also not become very good. If he takes f5, knight takes d4. After rook takes f5, bishop takes e4, rook h5, g3. Knight takes d4, c takes d4. White shouldn't experience any problems. Bishop d6. Now the easiest is to take on b7 and to play queen e4 with huge advantage. So black can also take immediately. C takes d4 and rook a d8. The idea is that after bishop takes e4, black takes on d4. And here he might get some chances later to get the pawn f5. So we simply don't give him the pawn d4. We play queen d1. Rook takes f5. What else can black play? For example, rook f e8. It's bad because of bishop b3, king h8, queen h5. Now black cannot take on d4 because rook e8 hangs. So queen e7, a d1, rook d6, and bishop e6. And here I think again it is obvious that the position of white is better. So rook d8, for example, d5, bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5, rook takes d5. We exchange everything and play queen g4. And now bishop hangs and pawn e4 hangs too. So here black probably should take on f5 already, move number 24. Rook takes f5, bishop takes e4, rook g5, g3, king h8, and queen b3. And obviously we will exchange white squared bishops and simply put our rook on d1, protecting pawn d4, and the position of white is better. So this is not a particular often variation, but you need to know it because it might be an unpleasant surprise, and it's not really huge, so there are not too many things to memorize.